Before we carried on, we'd like to make an apology about what happened in the last broadcast. We've received complaints that we had too many references to Danica Patrick and also to Pocono. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We do apologise for what happened last week, with numerous mentions about Danica Patrick. Now, we all know that everyone has their own opinions about that woman that drives a GoDaddy car. Some people might love her, other people might hate her. So therefore, we promise that every time we talk about Danica Patrick in this broadcast, we're going to do it with a sense of gist and excitement. We also received complaints that we were way too serious. So therefore, today we have vodka, wine and beer, as well as some Orange Crush. If you're ready, ladies and gentlemen, why don't we get going? This is the second episode of IndyCar Weekly.
Attention, the following video is going to totally kick ass. If you enjoy any of it and or have a large penis, please click the like button below. Enjoy.
So good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world once again, and welcome to the second episode of IndyCar Weekly. Well, Vincent with Matt, Cooke and Dave Judson there with you every week because they're lonely and they have nothing better to do with their lives. As well as Randy Crosney, who's dropped in because he's got a couple of extra Coors Lights lying about. And Brian Sutton as well. Dave, you keep on coming back. What's wrong with you?
Like you said, I have no life and I have nothing else better to do. And I thoroughly enjoy your company for whatever reason, so that's why I'm here.
It's because you're twisted and sadistic. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Will. How about yourself?
I'm not too bad. Happy belated Canada Day to you, by the way.
Thank you very much.
And
wasn't much of a special day around here, but
what do you actually do on Canada Day?
I would say the social norm is to get drunk and set off fireworks, but that's about it.
I don't even have
What's
any
different
idea
than
what
any
you're
other
talking
day?
about. Yeah, Dave. Happy Independence Day as well. It's a day when you kicked us English people out your country. It's like, oi, we win.
Yeah, it feels good to be liberated from the English, so the cause for celebration.
So, should we talk a little about IndyCar?
Absolutely.
IndyCar. It's been a busy old week in iRacing, hasn't it? Where should we start? Should we do the easy bit or the controversial bit first?
Oh, let's let them hang on a little bit for some controversy, so start with the easy stuff.
We'll start with the easy stuff, shall we? Pocono. It's been Pocono week. The prelude to the iRacing.com Pocono 400, which, shameless plug number one, the iRacing.com Pocono 400, live, exclusive, and I can say exclusive because it's not a WCS race, on GlacierTV, 13th of June, start time, 6 PM GMT? 7 PM GMT? I have no idea, I just get to commentate it. But it's been an incredibly interesting... Shut up! 2 Eastern, that's the time, 2 Eastern.
There you go.
It's been an incredibly interesting week, though, Dave and Matt. Starting, as always, with the Fixed Series.
Yeah, the fixed race was quite thrilling, especially for my virtual cockpit. I know that I had quite a battle with the championship leader, Andre Castro, who, depending on who you talk to, may not be the most cleanly driver out there, but that's neither here nor there. John Goke and Tim Doyle had great battle for first. Tim held on really well there for a while, but John was able to sneak through, and he took a really hard-earned victory there in the fixed race, and that really boosts his championship chances with just a couple weeks to go.
And Matt, I think that's the important thing. We'll talk about that, of course, on the open side of things a little bit later on, but on fixed, there is still an absolute lot to play for, and we are deep into the second half of the season right now, with only 2 rounds to go, Kentucky and Phoenix.
Absolutely, Will. I mean, the points are extremely close between the top 3 right now, and even top 5 has, well, I'd say top 4 at this point, has a chance of locking in the championship. It's going to be really interesting to watch how they do at Kentucky and Phoenix. Overall, we're looking for some really interesting racing.
We'll talk about the race that took place. Actually, no, we'll talk about championship standings first. That one's easier. We'll talk about championship standings. It is still Randy Crosney leading the way. 8 weeks counted. He's had 54 starts. In fact, I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at the oval and not the oval fixed. That's what's wrong with me. We'll talk about the oval open in a moment. We'll talk about the oval fixed first. You have a look at that, and you've got Andre Castro leading the way now. 1,530 points. We were going to get him on air this week. Something's come up with him. I think he's scared of you, Dave, actually. But he'll be with us next week. 10-point advantage over Tim Doyle. That's got to be impressive for Mr. Castro.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure here in the last 2 weeks because he hasn't been leading a lot of laps and winning like he had been accustomed to earlier in the season, and John have really gained a lot of points on him in the last 2 weeks. So yeah, Kentucky and Phoenix are really going to be interesting, and I know I will be there the last 2 weeks for sure.
At this point, he really needs to make sure that he stays in front of both Tim and Jonathan, without a doubt. I mean, he cannot let them gain any more points.
And the important thing for that is, as well, is that both of those races coming up, first Kentucky, then Phoenix, they're racers tracks. This isn't one of those conga line, follow the leader malarkeys. It's going to be pure racing, and it's going to make Castro's job even more difficult. In fact, arguably, if he had to flip the season on its reverse axis, he would have much rather have been fighting at Homestead and then... In fact, we've got Andre. He just walks into the building. But it'd be much easier for him to fight at Homestead and Charlotte when it's going to be Kentucky and Phoenix, where we're coming to. So, Dave, scheduling choice always comes into play in a 12-week season.
Say that again, Will?
I said scheduling choice comes into play in a 12-week season. Pay attention.
Yeah, you gotta... You know, depending on how strong or weak you feel you may be at certain tracks, I know for me specifically, Phoenix is not the best track for me. So if I was running the championship and I was that close in the points, I would really be trying to go for it as much as I can at Kentucky to try to see if I can open up a gap big enough that I can hold on at the end. But certain guys are better at Phoenix and Kentucky than others. So, you know, it all's going to see how, confident these guys feel they are at these next two tracks.
And in fact, we're going to have a little chat with Andre. Andre, you're leading the point standings. 2 races left. Well, 2 races and a major miracle at Pocono to go. 10 points over Tim Dahl. Right now, you've also got 50 points over John Cooke. Your season's been pretty entertaining so far.
Yeah, I think it's really, man, I don't know where to start. You know, at the beginning, I didn't really think I was running for the championship. I think it was only like week 3 I started doing the strength of field. But I won at New Hampshire and Milwaukee, so those were good. But other than that, it's been really close racing. Obviously, Pocono's 4 wide. Racing with Dave there. Yeah, it was really interesting, especially Pocono, such a fast track for the IndyCar. It's so wide, but going down to turn 1 is so fast. You really push up. I almost put it in the wall in the tunnel turn on the first lap. So, but yeah, no, it's been an interesting season. My lead is kind of coming down though, so. We're going to have to see what happens in the last 2 weeks. I really like Phoenix, so I'm looking forward to that.
And we'll talk about your Pocono race very quickly. You've alluded to it, a tough race. It's a very tough track as well, especially in that fixed setup. You've got to be really careful in working your way through traffic, and going 4 wide really is not something that you're going to want to have happen to you. But, Dom, how's the week been overall for you?
The week, yeah, I haven't really done any races since then, but that I don't think I'm gonna get any points matching that, obviously. But no, that track is very interesting. Honestly, I was never really a big fan of it, but going there was really interesting with the IndyCar as opposed to the Cup car. I like it a lot better in the IndyCar. Very fast. Obviously, they're going there in real life this week, so yeah, it should be a really interesting race to watch in real life. And I don't know if I plan to do any more races this week, but if I do, it'll just kind of be to race around, gain everything and stuff. So yeah.
And the last 2 weeks we have of the season, we've got that glorious track that's called Kentucky, which I hate with a passion, and then we also have Phoenix as well, which I love absolutely to bits. Why are you booing Phoenix, Judson?
No, I'm booing you hating Kentucky.
I just hate it. It's so bumpy, and I really don't like it. Especially on long races, pit exit, it's a bitch. But we'll start at Kentucky first. You looking forward to racing under the lights at the Kentucky Speedway?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I don't know, with the fixed setup, last time we were actually having to lift a little bit But you know, if you're side by side and stuff, we'll see this time. But yeah, it should be a really interesting race under the lights. As you said, the track is really bumpy. You know, some guys maybe take it too hard into the corner, and they have someone on the outside might not be so lucky. So we'll have to wait and find out.
And in fact, Matt, I'm going to bring you into this conversation very quickly. Andre, you're going to have to sit down for a minute. I'm sorry. So, racing side by side at Kentucky, we were talking earlier on, running that ultra high line. It's going to be fun for these drivers. Also going to be tough because that car, once you kind of get it into the corner, it kind of sticks in the lane it's in, and it's very difficult to move that car down once you're in the centre of the corner.
Yeah, without a doubt. The fixed setup for this season at the moment is bottoming out, actually. It wasn't updated, so you're actually in a lower gear than the previous season, but that comes with a bonus, which is the car becomes a lot more maneuverable, actually, on the track. It seems to stick wherever you place it. Unfortunately, you're right, though. Once you're in the turn, it is a little hard to get it to actually adjust, but in terms of where it can run anywhere on this track right now, which is going to really bring out some interesting racing. Draft-wise, though, if you are anywhere between 3/10 back and closer, you're going to get sucked right up on this set right now. You cannot pull away from anyone on this track.
And that's, for Kentucky, I mean, that's something that's, you know, been the case in real life all the time as well. I mean, we've never really been able to see 2 free-ride racing at Kentucky, not in the entire time that iRacing's had it in the IndyCar Series, but also you have a look at the races back in, you know, the late 2000s, so on and so forth, and Dave, it wasn't like Chicagoland or Vegas where you were running that too wide all the time. Of course, Ed Carpenter in 2011 famously beating Dario, but take that away, it's more like racing at Texas in IndyCar in the real life than it was racing at somewhere like Chicagoland.
Yeah, Kentucky's really wide, and it kind of gives you a lot of options. And with it being so bumpy, handling really comes into play. So you can't just set that car up to just stay on the bottom and hold it and hope nobody, you know, saves their, you know, push the pass buttons like in real life to the end to pass you. So that's why I like Kentucky on iRacing. You get a lot of choices. You can run on the outside, especially in the fixed set, and you can pinch a guy down and not have him move up into you. You can really carry a lot of momentum off the top. And I know passes can be made up there, and I'm expecting them to be made again this season. So this Monday's race should be really entertaining. And then, like Matt was saying with the draft, if it's really big and it sucks you in, you could have, like, you know, 2-3 cars side by side, 2-3 rows deep. So that could make things real interesting, have big championship implications for sure.
And in typical Will Vincent fashion, I never actually finished the conversation that I started, so we're going to go back to the conversation that I started with Andre. We've talked about Kentucky, the last race of the season, Phoenix, one of my favourite races, actually, in the entire iRacing Eyes on IndyCar series. And it is a fun track. In some ways, I'm a little bit peeved off that, you know, for me, the track isn't as fun to run as it was a year, 2 years ago, but still, it's a good, challenging track. And for Phoenix as well, qualifying is going to be incredibly interesting, Andre, because cold tyres that first lap, it could really throw up a curveball.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be one of the most interesting parts. But the thing about the strength of field races is you're going to have no qualifying, just field set on iRating. So that's always every week. That's always a curveball because you can't really control your destiny where you start that much as if you were qualifying. But yeah, especially on the restarts, going to be very interesting with cold tires. Kind of like Milwaukee. That track was very, you know, sliding around first lap on cold tires in New Hampshire too. So yeah, but I like Phoenix a lot. I think it's going to be a really good show we're going to put on there.
Well, feel free to stick around a little bit. Andre, say, leading the championship by 10 points in the iRacing.com IndyCar Fixed Series. Having a look, good number of races, actually, for Pocono. You're going to have to say, Matt, a lot more splits than we are used to seeing at Pocono, and a lot of that clearly has got to be people getting a little bit of practice before the iRacing.com Pocono 400.
Without a doubt. People are trying to get themselves in a nice little groove. If they're only going to be running the Rookie/D series, they're going to be putting practice in. Now, obviously, they can't be practicing that on the actual splits that are happening. So in this particular case, I'm thinking drivers are just more or less familiarizing themselves with how they're going to deal with the traffic on the actual track. It's also a very high speed, as Andre said. It's an enjoyable track to drive, and there's a lot that you can learn from just trying to drive it. I mean, it is a driver-based track, and there's a lot of skills you can pick up there.
I'm going to ask you a very silly question here. How the hell can someone be racing in the fixed series when, and also be racing in the rookie D race, unless you're one of those very few exceptions?
I tried to correct it midway through. Basically, the splits have nothing to do with that. It was my fault for bringing that up. But I'm sure that, rookie and D drivers are practicing or watching races.
Technically, you could be right at the same time, by the way, so I'm not going to call you a complete and utter idiot, because for those of you who's not a member of iRacing, go to iRacing.com now! You can get yourself half price off your first 3 months membership if you go to iRacing.com now! But the way it is, you can also actually race up. So you can be a D-class driver. If you've got a good enough safety rating, you can actually race up into the C-class. So you're not fully wrong, but the rookies can't. And Dave, it's encouraging to see so many people racing at Pocono, because we've had participation issues for years and years and years and years here. This is possibly one of the best weeks I've actually seen races going down in the fixed series and also in open.
Yeah, it's been fun to, I've run about 5 or 6 fixed races this week, and every one that I've been in is split once, if not more times. So that's just larger fields, more quality drivers in your race, and they've been pretty good. Inevitably, you get a wreck here and there on the first lap, guys getting a little overzealous going into turn 1. But most races have been pretty good, and even though it's a fixed setup, drivers' talent can really shine through. And if you're in the back and you didn't qualify, or you had a crummy qualifying time, it's fun to watch some of those guys drive up through the field. And it's been nice. And hopefully some of these guys that are, trying out Pocono in the IndyCar for the first time, or first time in a long time, will stick around with us, because we're not all crazy like everyone thinks.
Well, we've already mentioned Pocono way too many times. I know there's going to be at least one driver who's drunk already. We apologise. But we've still got to talk about the Open Series. Open, it's, again, I've talked about it already, good racing so far. You've already talked about it. But as far as the championship goes, it's still a little bit of an interesting situation if I get my timing up. We have Randy Cosno, 1,163 points. We have Matt Lambertson with 1,055 points. Matt Cooke, 1,043 points. Rob Ugelinks, 994 points. And then Martin Miller, 967 points. And in 6th, 901 points for Jonathan Goke. However, Martin Miller has still got 2 races left to go. There's a good chance that Martin Miller could actually still take this championship away from Randy, knowing how good he is at Phoenix, and knowing how damn good he is at Kentucky as well. Dave?
Yeah, Martin would obviously not be considered a Darks defending champion from last season. With 6 weeks, he has no drops, so it's make or break for him. If he scores 150 points, he gets 150 points. He's got no drop weeks to worry about. But if he has a bad finish, then that's going to bad finish the next 2 weeks is really going to deflate those championship chances. Same for Goke. Yeah, he's 66 points behind Miller and has 1 more week, so he'll have 1 drop week to play with. So it's going to be interesting to see if John even runs. I have not seen him run this week in the Open. So championship, and Randy is having a very consistent, strong season. Won a couple strength of field races this season. I would think it would be safe to say it's probably a career season for him so far, no matter where he finishes in the points. But he's having a great year. He's got over a 100-point lead with 2 weeks to go. I think it's going to come down between him and Martin Miller, to be honest.
Randy, put your beer down and turn on your mic. How you doing? We are going to have to wait for Randy. There we are. Randy, championship leader. How's it going, bud?
It's going well, thank you. But I'm not putting down my Coors Light.
You're leading the championship. You got yourself what 100 and I'm dyslexic 108 points over Matt Lambertson right now in the battle for the championship lead. Matt Cooke is a further 12 points back. Two questions really. You worrying about them the most, or are you worrying about Miller and Goke, who sat in the 5th and 6th positions the most?
To be real honest with you, I'm worried about me getting a couple of good finishes and getting rid of 2 drop weeks that'll benefit me. So that's what I'm mostly concerned with. But yeah, in the back of my mind, yeah, there's Martin coming. John's got a chance, and Matt also. So it's going to come down to be the last week. It'll be a lot of fun.
And of course, Fugilinks isn't technically out of the picture yet either. A couple of wins by him, he'll be right back there in the championship front. This is what I call racing for a championship, Randy. And it's the sort of thing right now, you don't have to win the next 2 strength of field races. We know that you've done a lot of racing this season. I think, they've said it, standout season for you, but you're in a situation now where you don't have to win races. Top 5's incredibly important. Podiums, incredibly important. Does that affect your mindset going into the last 2 weeks of the season?
To be honest with you, it doesn't. I looked at the stats last year, and I saw the guys that had done really well. They had top 5s, and so to be perfectly honest, this season I wasn't trying to really win a championship. I just wanted top 5s. I wanted my ink rate to be low, and those were the 2 things I was most concerned with. And so I've been doing that all season, and with these last 2 races to go, I'm not going to change a thing. I'm gonna hopefully not have any inks, and I'm hopefully going to get top 5s. And by getting the top 3, I'll be thrilled. To be honest with you, at the end of the season.
Oh, don't be political, Randy. You know you want to win this championship.
Okay, what I need is for Matt Cooke to get in there and cause a big old wreck and take Martin out and take Rob and everybody else get involved. There, that sound better?
There you go. We got to get some controversy going. No one will keep listening.
Yeah, how much you paying him?
As Robin Miller says, man, you got to have some hate in the series to bring up the ratings. But I say that jokingly. All these competitors in the Open Series, they've been around, and it's fun to see, especially a new guy like Matt Cooke come along and do so well so soon.
Well, Matt and Andrew, I'm going to have to say, 2 standout drivers in the last 6 months or so. I'm going to ask you a deadly serious question now, Randy. How much are you going to pay Matt Cooke to cause this big wreck in the next 2 races, knowing that you only actually pay people in Coors Light?
Well, actually, there's in Canada, there's a beer called Molson. Oh, man, it is the best. So I'll just leave it at that and let Matt come to his own conclusion.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Randy has actually got a beer more favourable than Coors Light. There you are. But thanks for talking to us. Championship, 2 races left. Kentucky, Phoenix. Which one are you looking forward to the most? The horrible bumpy grindness BS that is Kentucky. Shut up. Or the beauty that is Phoenix. And remember, Randy, actually, we have a little bit of history at Phoenix.
I actually like Phoenix a little bit better as far as racing than I do Kentucky. But I'm going to put forth the same effort in both. But speak of this history, can you enlighten me on that?
Yeah, it's when we kind of, worked and had fun. That was it. No wrecking. Well, actually, no. No. We'll let you into a little bit of a secret here. Back in the day, when Randy and I started doing some work together, this was the people like Eves Warner as well. We would do half an hour of solid non-stop testing. We'd do an entire fuel run. Then what did you do after that, Randy, at Phoenix?
Make a pit stop?
Come on, road course, demolition derbies. I know you're an old man, but come on, you've got to remember that.
You're testing him too much.
I am.
Yeah.
Randy, go and drink another beer. Thanks for
No,
talking to us.
no, the best demolition derbies we had is when we do the sumo wrestling in the sand pit at Homestead. To me, that's the favorite one.
True story. Thanks for talking to us, Randy. I'll tell you what, Trainer, I know you're down there. We'll talk to you a little bit later on. We are going to talk about the Pocono 400. Yeah, I know. Pocono 400 qualifying starts next week, and 4-lap average qualifying. 4-lap average qualifying, Matt. Really, it's going to be a game changer compared to what we've seen this week, because those 1-lap qualifying setups that we have, chuck them into the track if you can. You're not going to be able to use them.
For the most part, you're right. In some cases, you might be able to find something out of your 1-lap qualifying, but in general, you're going to be looking towards your race set in most cases, and you're going to just try and find something that'll hold together for those 4 laps, really bringing it to the edge of what the car can do. It's going to take a lot of work for people to get consistent lap times on Pocono, because you got turn 1 that's going to be bumpy as all hell, and then you got turn 3, which is a driver's turn, and if you don't hit that line consistently and the car doesn't stay the exact same throughout the entire run, you could make a big mistake ultimately each time.
Yeah, I would argue that it's easier to drive, 4 laps. But if you don't hit your marks just right, it's really going to kill you, like worse than I think at Indy, because Indy's all about letting it float out of the corner. That's where a lot of guys hit the wall and negates their laps. At Pocono, you could turn in just right, and if you just hit a bump just wrong and it shoots you up the track, it could ruin your 4 laps. So it's really going to be interesting to see who really comes out on top here after the qualifying's over with.
See, that's why I agree. That's where I agree with you, but disagree with you at the same time. In my opinion, 1 lap at Pocono. So long as you can get turn 3 coming to your money lap done, I always think that's easier than doing 1 lap at Indy. Mainly because of the fact you're flat all the way around. So long as you can hit your apexes, in my opinion, they're not as catastrophic as at Indy. You mess up an apex, you've lost yourself 2 temps. There you are, game over. 4 lap average, that's where I agree with you, because that consistency is going to be key. And hitting those 12 apexes, it's gonna be tough. And also, let's not forget, the tyres, the way that they handle changed, Dave, over those 4 laps. So you've got to kind of find a way of managing that tyre drop-off by not pushing the car too hard, but you still need that all-and-out pace.
Yeah, guys are going to be really tempted to push it really hard, like they're running a 1 or 2 lap session. By lap 3 and 4, say you're coming out of turn 3 on coming to your 3rd or 4th lap, and you really don't nail that corner, and you scrub off a bunch of speed on this front, but you go into turn 1, those front tires are too hot, and you're going to start sliding around and pushing up, and you'll just blow that whole lap, and you could blow your whole average by having, being 2 tenths off. And another thing to point out too, we all know Pocono's bumpy, and turn 1's really bumpy, and 3 is a driver's turn. Something to think about too is turn 2 is not the smoothest corner either. There's a bump right by the apex on the curb, and that could shoot you up the track. And I know in my practices, if you hit that bump wrong, you can lose a 10th easy. So it's very hard to get the line just right at Pocono and avoid all them bumps.
We'll talk more about racing at Pocono next week. Due to the fact that people bugged us enough, we're going to actually have 2 shows next week. We're going to have the same one, same time, same place, as it's going to be every single week until the death of all of civilization. Then we're also going to have one an hour before the race. It'll be the GlacierTV pre-race show for the Pocono 400. But we're going to leave Pocono to one side, and we're going to go into something a little bit more controversial. Who likes controversy here?
I do.
Yay! In fact, no, before we go to controversial, we'll go to even more controversial. How you doing, Brandon?
How you doing?
Oh, come on. You got to give me a better smile than that. I know you live in New Jersey.
Come on. I haven't talked to you in like a week. No, it's probably been like years.
I know. How you doing? How's life in Broken Arrow?
Norton's been cracking that whip, and man, my back is so red right now. No, it's going fun. I kind of started NASCAR, running the B car, and I found a few guys who are willing to help me out, and kind of letting my wings fly over there for now.
So, a little bit of a break from IndyCar, a little bit of time over in NASCAR. Some people are going to start giving you a nickname, you know that. But you're gonna be sticking around for the big events, of course, the Pocono 400. We've already got the petition. Can we have a Fontana 500 as well if that track actually comes about in time for that race? You're gonna do the second race of the Triple Crown, or are you gonna go and just drive stock cars?
Well, you know I can't leave my grassroots. I always have to come back to IndyCar.
Short and sweet answer. I'm wondering if you're finished or something here. But also, you normally do racing over the season. How's your real life racing career going?
I don't want to talk about that.
Okay, we'll talk about something else. I've talked about Broken Arrow.
No. It's
B
fine.
Series. Let's
It's
talk
just,
about B Series. B Series. How is it
Okay.
different to the IndyCar? I mean, of course, we know that tyre wear, for example, big difference. That drop off, it's a big difference. But how is it? How more difficult or different is it racing in that car compared to the open wheeler that is Indy?
Alright, before I start explaining, Norton's already calling me a traitor, so I have to give a little shout out to Ryan Norton over there. But the B car is a lot different. When I first started, it was the first week at Homestead, and I started running the fixed, and I was just getting killed after 10 laps. Like, I was just falling right to the back, and I realized that I was overdriving the car. And compared to IndyCar, you have to drive that car so smoothly, and you have to be so conservative on the tires compared to IndyCar. It's unbelievable.
Before I go on, I did tick the button on YouTube that said that we're not going to have paid product placements. But hey, Ryan, how you doing? It's all right. I'll let you off this one time.
Danica.
I promise. Danica.
Go over there.
But yeah, there's another 2 shots for you. But
Danica.
So B car different. Are you looking to progress up into the Cup car, the Gen 6, Ford, Chevy, Pro, WCS? Am I thinking too much here?
I'm kind of planning on doing hopefully a full year of the B car, and then trying to go pro, and who knows, maybe DWC.
You can't call it DWC. This is GlacierTV. It's WCS.
My bad.
Oh, that's all right. Stick around. It's only going to get more controversial now in the second half. Yeah, we're pretty much halfway through. Awesome. Second half now of IndyCar Weekly on GlacierTV. Will Vincent still with Dave Judson, Matt Cooke, Ryder Cosno, Andre Castro, Brandon Trano, who's disappeared, and Brian Sutton, who's just not actually been here from the start. We're going to talk about the controversial topics now. And actually, first one. iRacing's got themselves a little bit of free publicity with the IndyCar recently, and for those of you who's a fan of IndyCar, you might know Derek Walker was like, send me your questions. For those of you who don't know who Derek Walker is, pretty much he's now got a position of power. He's now IndyCar's president of operations and competition. You can actually tweet him at DJW IndyCar. And interestingly there, Dave, we had, what, 4 or 5 people saying, oi, what's happening with the DW12 and iRacing?
Yeah, it's nice to get some of that knowledge out there. Maybe a guy powerful like Mr. Walker there can go back to IndyCar, maybe push them a little bit to push on iRacing to get us to that wonderful car, and hopefully we'll be able to run it sooner rather than later in the iRacing series here.
And, I mean, I remember I had a chat with a person who shall remain nameless back at a venue that shall remain nameless back in January 2012. And the good old iRacing word came up. Andre, what word am I saying?
Soon?
Correct. 10 points to you. You can also have a cookie once you go off there.
Thanks.
But, I mean, we're, what, 18 months on almost from that now? And the thing is, we know that iRacing's had its priorities. With the Gen 6 car, for example, a ton of new content has come out. In fact, some of that has directly helped IndyCar. You look at tracks, for example, like Kansas, Fontana, which is coming up at some point soon as well. We've had Motegi in that time as well. And I'm sure there's a couple of tracks which I've just managed to forget about. Kentucky's come along the line, Iowa's come along the line ever since I've been on here, so a lot of cars and tracks have come about. The thing is, though, at the same time, these guys want the IndyCar now, and it's not, I think it's not only going to be a benefit for the Oval Series, and of course we always make that talk about the Oval Series, but we also have that benefit for the Road Guy series as well, because let's be honest, they desperately want a new car as well, Matt.
Yeah, well, I have a couple friends that run, the stock cars, the A-Fix, the B-Fix, and they say that even though they don't race the IndyCar, it's mostly because they have the old car, and they really, really want the DW12 to come along the line. So, yeah, like you said, obviously the road racers want a new car, but, I think it's going to really attract a lot more people to the series. If people complain about, not the car being old and not having enough participation, and,
Well, let's equate this to real life. If I'm a new fan of IndyCar racing, and I'm watching it, and I'm enjoying the racing that I've seen so far this year, and I go to the #1 race simulator in the world as far as I'm concerned in iRacing, what do I find? I don't see that car there. IndyCar needs all the promotion it can get. Do they have the DW12 on other platforms? They do, but they're certainly not at the level of iRacing. IndyCar needs every fan, every chance they get. So I think it would be beneficial to IndyCar in the series in real life to have the DW12 on iRacing as soon as possible to get and maybe maintain fans like that who are sim racers, younger guys, or gamers that are looking for as realistic of an experience as possible.
And you mentioned that, actually, that's a good point. If I remember correctly, there was a deal signed to actually make an IndyCar game in conjunction with those pathetic, robbing bastards called Sim Raceway. And of course, they already have a DW12 on Sim Raceway. If I'm going to quantify what I said very quickly there. We've had on iRacing now, 4 iRacing.com Indianapolis 500. All been very good races. We've always had a field of 33. Might not have been able to do the 3-wide start. Sim Raceway, a field of 12 for their Indy 500. That must have been one hell of a boring race.
That's absolutely pathetic.
But I think that's the important point as well. And I tell you what, I came onto iRacing because I went to racecontrol.indycar.com when I couldn't actually get live coverage in the UK to watch IndyCar. And every time that damn website went down or buffered, I got Dan Weldon popping up. It's like, hey, go over to IndyCar. I was like, oh, okay. Go to iRacing. Oh, okay. And I ended up on iRacing because of that advert on the IndyCar website. And it was a two-way thing. I become more passionate than I ever was about IndyCar, and I already was. But at the same time, I was driving something, a sim, which brought me closer and closer into the series. Now, it seems as though there is no one real product that IndyCar can call their own. And Matt, of course, we all love in some ways the car that we have, and we're incredibly thankful for it. Do you think that it's a two-way process here, that IndyCar is actually hurting itself by not licensing things properly and not actually providing the opportunities for, this DW12 to get out? Of course, we know at the same time, this car has changed how many times already in the last 18 months?
Without a doubt, it's hurting its possibility to increase its fan base. You have a lot of people on here that love racing. And even if they don't enjoy IndyCar as much, if they actually get a chance to drive the car that's being used and it's modeled correctly, they could find a new love for a car that they never originally intended. And in terms of the previous car, it's fun to drive. There's no doubt that it's a good car, but it would be nice to be driving the actual car that they're currently using rather than something that is extremely out of date at this point.
Yeah, I think IndyCar's had a long history of making decisions that shoot themselves in the foot and not, like you were saying, maybe not licensing things properly. At this point, they got to get any exposure they can get. And the current car in this simulator is probably not going to get it done like the DW12 would.
I talk about controversial decisions that shoot IndyCar in the foot, and I say I love IndyCar to bits. I think, Car, they sealed their own destiny back in 2001 with that Texas Firehawk 600 malark. For me, one of the low points of me watching IndyCar in the last 5 years was when they were trying to ramp up the casual viewer. And it was the 2011 Twin 275s at Texas. Great idea in principle. but then you have Willpower magically get himself pole position the one year that you couldn't overtake at that racetrack, and oh, look at that, all of a sudden, yeah! Willpower wins his one and only oval race. I mean, he's about as lucky in an oval than Danica, for Christ's sake.
For God's sake.
I know. Have another shot, Ryan. How you doing? He's passed out already. There we are.
He's being quiet. He's being shy.
No.
Sorry, I had to put the beer down. I switched to beer tonight because you guys just got me way too messed up last week.
But I think, that's one of the things as well. With Derek Walker coming in, I think there's a good team around IndyCar right now. I actually was always a fan of Randy Bernard. I have to say, he tried everything he could with the product. There's still a long way, as far as I'm concerned, for IndyCar to go. We'll talk about one of them very quickly that also came up in that same article, Ryan. And that was the TV contract. And it's kind of surprising to me, and also I'm paying attention to what Robin Miller said in his latest mailbag, that NBC's contract is specifically for NBC Sports, which is causing a big block on any races being shown on network. Now, I'm not quite sure whether that's something that ABC said or whether it's something that NBC said, but as, IndyCar fans, as many races on network, surely that's what IndyCar's got to aspire to right now.
Well, that's another shooting yourself in the foot decision. I think, IndyCar was so desperate to get any kind of exposure, they signed on with the Versus network at the time, and I don't think NBC owned it when they signed the contract, so that might have something to do with it. But I think we all know that contracts aren't worth much as long as there's enough money thrown around. You'd think somebody would want to, make that payment to get the more exposure. NBC's not helping themselves either. I believe I saw on Twitter that on the NBC Sports Twitter feed, they had not talked about IndyCar racing at any time since May 24th. If they're looking for exposure for their, people who buy commercials and things on their channels, not telling people about the races isn't helping either.
Well, and I think for NBC, I feel sorry for them in some ways because they lost what would be that most exciting part of the season when you've had, all the races from Indy to Pocono with the exception of that one race at Milwaukee because I'm guessing ABC were too busy preparing for NASCAR Nationwide Series or something, I don't know. But this is my biggest issue as well. I think everyone in this room can agree that NBC Sports coverage is superior by a million light years to that of ABC's. I've always been a Marty Reid fan. I'm bored of him now. Scott Goodyear bores me to tears. And it's not even Harry Leindack. I can't remember who the other one is. He pisses me off that much. NBC Sports Network, they've got Diffie these days, and Diffie, I think, as far as I'm concerned, is invigorated a new lease of life into the casual viewer for commentating on that series. You still got Jan Beekers. He's amazing. You got Wally Dunlap. He's good at his job. That team, their presentation is great. ABC suck. But the thing is, more people see the races on ABC. Here's the big question for this segment of the show. Where does IndyCar need to do? Should they go to CBS? Of course, there's not much point in them trying to go to Fox Sports because, well, speed's gone. They'll probably end up on Fox Sports 2, which is Fuel TV right now. They're going to be in a worse situation than where they were. So, do they go to TNT or to CBS? Do they try and go all the way back to ABC the entire season and hope they give two damns about them? Try and focus in some form of network deal with NBC? What do they do? Anyone answer this one?
Well, NBC over the last year has shown that they want to do more with open wheel racing. I think IndyCar's best bet is to stick with NBC, get more network races, and stick with one channel exclusively. They, like you said, do a great job. It was fun when they did Milwaukee and they had some of the Formula One guys on there. It added a different level to the broadcast and maybe, different people interested in a series they don't watch too often. Fox Sports isn't obviously going to come. ESPN, ABC, they don't even care about NASCAR. They just like the commercial revenue. So NBC seems like the right channel, the right fit. You just got to get away from always bad coverage. But you know what? At least we don't have Sam Posey and Bobby Unser arguing with each other like they used to in the 80s and 90s. So I'll take Scott Goodyear any day over that.
And one thing, I am going to give a little bit of credit to NBC here. When you have the F1 races, their F1 races, let's not forget, are on the NBC Sport Network, except for 4 races, just like the deal was with Speed and Fox when they had it on network TV. And when you had an F1 race, because I actually watched the F1 coverage rather than watching I watched it on the American feed rather than watching the British feed, because I'm fed up with English commentators starting every race exactly the same way. Lights out and away we go. But with that, I mean, you get, I think, I count about 5 IndyCar little overlays and graphics and stuff like that, and adverts on an F1 race, and they switch it around. NBC should be the home, well, they advertise themselves as the home of open wheel racing. Again, open floor, Dave, you're not allowed to answer this time, however. Is it the fact that that NBC need to try and solidify that branding to, you know, say, look, we are open wheel, we've got all the open wheel coverage that actually means anything in the world, stick with us, we'll do you proud? Come on.
I'm gonna jump in if no one else does.
Oh no, Andre started talking. Shut up.
Go ahead.
No, I think that it could attract a lot of new fans if, especially if they get more network races on the main channel. You know, we had a couple of F1 races on the main channel, and you know, honestly, I think I missed Monaco because I didn't know they were going to be on the main channel. So I looked on NBC Sports. I was like, no, where's the race? I didn't see it, but obviously it's better if more people get to see it. I think if IndyCar could slowly work their way to position, you know, more races on the network channel, on the main NBC channel for maybe, you know, sometimes the entire season. Like, you know, NASCAR, they're always on the main channels, Fox, TNT, ESPN. So if IndyCar could put themselves in a position like that, I think they do very well. I just don't know about ABC because, you know, like you said, the team is, you know, they're not the best. So I think it would be better if they could get a position with NBC. Obviously, the crew is very experienced, so that would be better for them. But, you know, we'll see what they do.
And whoever just posted on Twitter, no, you can't actually just have GlacierTV. Carry on, Marco. Whoever it was. Someone started talking.
Calling me Marco now, Will.
Yeah, I am calling you Marco. Make friends.
Conversation.
I think it's one thing to say you want on NBC, but I think they need to work on more primetime slots as well. Saturday night, to me, under the lights is pretty cool. And Texas was kind of boring a little bit, but I think they need more night races and more prime time.
Well, you make a good point there, actually. The one time they've actually been, you know, prime time this season was unfortunately the most boring race of the season. And you also, you know, have a look at the comments post-Iowa race, and they were saying that, you know, attendance was down in some part because of the fact that, you know, it was raining, potential for rain that day, but also because of the fact that that format was too confusing, and also it's at the wrong time. They should have just had it as a Saturday night race. It would be great to have that at Iowa, so on and so forth. So that's a very good point there. But, you know, again, ABC, they've got the Indy 500. Perhaps they might just end up keeping the 500 and NBC does something else. Personally, I'd love to see CBS get back into the act as well, but unlikely to happen because they concentrate so much on the NFL these days, and they're too scared to, you know, put anything up that will go against that ever again. We're going to move on from one controversial topic to one that's even more controversial. Guys, it's the iRacing IndyCar Community Council thing. For those of you who don't know, it's been a kind of up and down week, really. Idea was put forward, let's create an IndyCar Council. We got one stage, and then it all kind of stopped. Well, there was a bit of a hack in the system, but in some ways it's a bit of a shame. In other ways, I think that we could agree that there's a want for people to do something, but there's got to be a deal of planning, I think, and to get to that point when people can do it properly.
I think if you're a history and you understand how IndyCar racing has operated over the last 15, 20 years, the idea of a council scares a lot of people because we all know how CART worked. Well, say that it didn't work. In my opinion, the council was rushed. It wasn't given enough thought. The principle of it may work in theory, but with people not knowing what it was going to do, what it was there for, what was the responsibilities, were they the ultimate say did they have the ultimate say when you were talking to iRacing about scheduling, blah, blah, blah. You got to give it more time, give it a season, work it out, get everyone's opinion in it, and then maybe you implement something like that. But I think we all know that it was hacked, and it wasn't going to work out anyway. So I think maybe once things cool down a little bit, you bring it back up, do it the right way, and say, we got a 12-week season. Let's figure out who should be on it, what their responsibilities are, and make it so that it's more acceptable to the community.
I think the point that you made about it being rushed, of course, it all came as a catalyst from a post, one single little post by Mr. Poor Little Tony Gardner, which kicked off the whole chain. And, I personally think that, if that post was made 4 weeks ago, we probably wouldn't be in a position like we are now, because we all know, schedules, there's the finite time and a deadline when they've got to be submitted, so iRacing to prepare it all, do all the background code work. It's probably a lot more difficult than we actually think to have that happen. But the idea of having a council, it really is one that has split the community in some ways. But you have a look, you talk about kart, for example, but you also talk about the GBDA, for example, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, which, they threatened to boycott the German Grand Prix if something wasn't done about the tyre situation over there. And it does show that there are ways and means of doing things which can work. They have an elected leader, they have elected responsibilities, and if you look at it as such an idea as that, all of a sudden, then it's actually not too bad. Anyone but Judson, come on.
Well, one of the things that was frustrating reading a lot of responses was the fact that they would say, "Oh, we don't want a 7-member council, but we'll put a single person in charge." And I think if it's anybody's going to be in charge, I think it should be more than one person. And I've been on both sides of that coin. And to me, if you're going to have anybody have a say, it needs to be more than one person. So that alone, for me, kind of speaks to the idea of having one.
And I think one of the things is as well, and apologies for those of you who might have just heard me blow smoke out, I forgot to mute my microphone, but the idea of having a council, I think, overall is something that I know a number of people are interested in progressing. The important question is really, what can be learnt from what's happened?
Well, I think, if I'm allowed to answer,
Yeah,
you're going to have to... We all know that the IndyCar community gets divided pretty easily. Got to take a vote and give it a, hey, next week we're going to take a vote, just to hypothetically say. We're going to take a vote next week. Do you want this council or not? Yes or no? And then go from there. If the majority decide on a council, then you figure out, give 3 choices. Do we have a council with 5 people, 7 people, 8, 9, whatever? 8 won't work, but you know what I'm saying. You got to get the community vote on everything if you want something to represent the community to be successful. Give it time, figure out each step, and then go from there. I'm not opposed to a community or a council. I'm opposed to it being rushed.
And to be fair, go on, whoever's talking, talk.
It really depends how it's laid out in front of the community as well. You can't just come in with a huge set of rules that you expect them to abide by, because that's going to be too limiting. You have to build it with them, otherwise they're going to feel as if everything is set in a particular way where they're going to lose control of a series that they want to be part of.
Yeah, I think you said it well there, Matt. I mean, John Forzek laid out some guidelines, and they were discussion points, but I think everybody grasped onto those guidelines and said, oh, this is what the council is going to be? No, this isn't right. And, John, in trying to do a good thing, I think that if it was a discussion point and everybody said, you know what, that's a good idea regarding schedules, regarding, 2-lap, 4-lap qualifying, those types of things, yes. But when it got into taking points away from drivers and things, I think that's where the resistance came, and I think everybody held on to that, and that's when it went south. and it just kept going south from that point on. So I think that if something is proposed in the right way and everybody agrees with what a council can and cannot do, then I would think that yes, 7 people would be a good voice and opinion for the group. But again, it's got to be everybody agreed upon beforehand.
Yeah, just to tag on with Randy, if I think what scares people off is that the council will decide things. If a council can only recommend things to iRacing and then iRacing makes the ultimate decision on whether to go with it or not or make whatever schedule, then I think that would ease some people's minds. But guys got to let their opinions be known, and I think it was a good discussion, even though we didn't all agree on it. You know, there weren't any name calling. As far as I could tell, you know, nobody was posting anything vulgar about anybody. It was a good discussion, and I think it'll lead to better things, hopefully, in the future.
To play the flip side, though, is it really needed? I mean, couldn't you just put all of these, questions that the council would ultimately answer down and just let the community decide through a huge vote?
Yeah, like you could take maybe the council could come up with, say, 3 schedules, like A, B, and C, and then you could lay them out and then have the community vote on them, and then the council would just say, all right, the community has chosen, schedule C, we'd like to run that next season or the next 2 seasons. So maybe it's kind of a hybrid.
I'm just speaking in a sense that the council doesn't exist, though.
Oh,
I'm saying I'm leaving it completely open. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'm going to say that I don't want 7 people to be in control ultimately, or be, the conduit between the community and iRacing. I want iRacing to literally have to come to us.
Yeah, I think that's what first has to be decided. Take a vote, council or not. Give it the right time, say in 2 weeks we're taking a vote, and so everyone knows when the vote's going to take place, and then leave it open for, say, a week, and do it on iRacing so you can't have somebody hack it and vote 7,000 times for X Miller.
That's what captures are there for.
And decide if the majority of the community wants a council, then go forward with it. If not, then we don't have to worry about it anymore.
When you look at the success of the roadside and that community, and those guys really have it together, it's a little easier. There are a lot less drivers on the roadside, and you've got a leader that stepped up that everybody believes in, and so they're good to go. And on the oval side, we've got, I don't know what the numbers are, but they're huge. We have way more folks involved in oval than road. And I'm not trying to say anything bad about road, because I race there and I love it, and those guys are awesome. But when you have more and more people, there's more things going on, and that's why I personally think a council is not a bad idea if laid out in the right way, and if everybody agreed that that's how it should be done.
Ryan,
One of
we
the
want you to
problems
talk. There you are.
about voting, one of the problems with voting that some people may or may not realize this, is that in a vote, the majority always wins, of course, which leads you down to the path that things tend to remain static. You don't try new things. So when people talk about voting, I get hesitant because it eliminates a lot of opportunities. And I'm not talking about to touch a favorite subject of Will Talladega, but what about a track like Rockingham, Darlington? Those are tracks that people would like to run, I think, but because it's a majority always wins, and in the forums it's usually a hard course majority, you eliminate some of those options from the get-go, even though if you had a general consensus of the entire population instead of the people that just still visit the forums, they might be a little bit more popular. So that, to me, is kind of the downside of voting. It's got a lot of upsides, but I think that needs to be taken into account.
Well, so often the majority isn't the majority anyway, but that's getting into politics, and we're not allowed to talk about politics. There we are. The next vote, by the way, is going to be the alternative voting system for an IndyCar thing. And of course, there are flip sides to this as well, because you've had Bram doing some work in a different way this season, and there's points, that Ryan's just raised about that. And also a couple of working groups going on at the moment. I know that Project 14, unfortunately, have had to put on a week's hiatus. It will be coming back, by the way, if you're listening, Project 14. It will return, I promise. And then there's discussions held elsewhere as well, you know. The GT people is like, whoa, wait a minute, why is it only the F1 people that get themselves a Pro Series or a World Championship Series, and why is it only the NASCAR people that get themselves a World Championship Series? In fact, the guy from iRacing Brazil, Rafael, said, hey, we could have one of the IndyCar, one of the GT car, one of the NASCAR car, one of the F1 car. You pretty much cover every single base you have to have there. So that pretty much, you know, works out there. For the record, we might cut out in a couple of moments, but I'm going to try something. We're going to carry on just a little bit. Hey, Cooke, you there?
Yes, sir. What's up?
I'm not too bad. We tried to talk to you earlier on, but I don't know what you were doing. Probably eating, as far as I'm concerned. But
First of all, if you're calling me fat, no, and I was taking off my uniform. Thank you.
Oh, shut up. But doing pretty well in the championship right now. You've got yourself 2 tough weeks to go, however, if you're going to close up rounding that championship, because of course you've got a drop week which you're going to throw away, but you've got to have 2 very, very, very strong races at Kentucky and Phoenix if you're going to have any chance of getting that championship away from him.
Well, are we talking about open or fixed here, sir?
Whichever one you want to talk about.
Well, fixed is going to be tough too because Andre and Tim are some of the best out there driving around. So I mean, it was an absolute pleasure racing them at Texas, and Pocono was awesome passing Tim. And then Kentucky is going to be a lot of fun because it seems like if you got the high line, it should work out. And as it comes to the open, Randy's got it, or Martin's going to come from behind and take it. I don't really have a chance there. I'll just be happy to get a top 5 in both series. That'd be really cool.
And what's your... we won't ask your opinion on that because we've pretty much almost run out of time already. But, in fact, we'll ask your opinion about Pocono 400. Are you going to look forward to it?
Of course I am. I mean, I'm having a great week at Pocono on my accounts. It's just been outstanding. Pocono is by far my favorite track now.
Couldn't win the ISOWC Pocono 400, though, Cooke. That was me. Just had to point that out.
Don't even go there.
Now, behave, boys. Plenty of action, of course, to come your way this coming weekish and a bit on GlacierTV. ISOWC coverage may or may not return this week. The ISOWC Triple Crown, Road Triple Crown, actually, from Road America. That's coming your way in the ISOWC IndyCar Series. Also got action coming your way, as say, 13th of July, the iRacing.com Pocono 400, part of our Super Saturday coverage, will be bringing you a total of 6 hours live broadcasting malarkey stuff over the course of that weekend. First with the iRacing.com Grand Prix World Championship Series, and then also later on in the day we're going to have IndyCar Weekly Special, trackside from Pocono before the race progresses, and then also live commentary all the way through the race, live and pretty much uninterrupted, unless I need to go and get myself another beer, on GlacierTV as well. And I think that's pretty much all we have time for. Thanks for all you guys for deciding to come along. We haven't talked to Eric. We'll talk to him next week. IndyCar Weekly will return also same time, 7 Eastern, 6 Central, next Friday night. We are going to talk a little bit more about Pocono. I know, I'm sorry. We're also going to talk about Kentucky. Road guys, I'm really sorry we didn't get to talk to you. We'll talk a lot more about the Road Series as they enter their final week. It will be next week in IndyCar Weekly Episode 3. I've been Will Vincent, Brian Sutton, Dave Judson, Eric Davis, Matt Cooke, Randy Crosner, Andre Castro, Brandon Traino, Jonathan Go, Camargo Beaton, and